5 mistakes every new fisherman makes with fishing line, starting now. It's hard to go fishing without this stuff right here, but if you're new to the sport, there might be some things you don't know about it. If you don't follow these tips, it might end up costing you your catch or the fish of a lifetime. And you know me, I'm not gonna beg you for subs and likes. I'm just gonna hop into number 1, believing the rating. What I'm talking about here is the breaking strength. Most lines that are labeled, say 20-pound test, won't actually break until 30 pounds. It's a misrepresentation, and what ends up happening is you are fishing with a line that is much stronger than you need or what you want for that target species of fish. And the problem is you're at a disadvantage because there's no way for you to know. A 10-pound test that actually breaks at 12, a 17-pound test that actually breaks at 22, or a 4-pound that breaks at 6. And you might be thinking,
hey there, don't worry about it, I'm the one that benefits.
Well, not exactly. What ends up happening is actually the company benefits because you think you're using 10-pound line and you rave about the strength and become a customer for life. It's good business. Here's the thing, fish can see your line. If your fishing line has a higher pound test, well, that means the diameter of that fishing line is larger. Because your fishing line is visible, it's not out of the question that your catch rate may decrease because the fish can see your line. Another thing is that your line could be too heavy, and what happens if your line's too heavy for your rod, it's gonna make it much more difficult for you to cast those small lures and small baits. Keep in mind, the average Joe, you and me, we don't put too much pressure on the line when we're fighting a fish. If you don't believe me, tie your line to the end of your scale and fight it like you would a large fish, and you'd be surprised how little pressure you're putting on that fish. So then we got the question, what actually makes your line snap? Well, I believe it has less to do with the breaking strength and more to do with the following. Tell me if this sounds familiar to you.
Hey man, how much you got wrapped up in your fishing gear?
I got $2,500 wrapped in my kayak, another $1,000 in my fish finder, a couple more $1,000 in my fishing gear. Oh yeah, my trailer, that cost about another $1,000.
Man, that's pretty awesome. When are you gonna change out your fishing line?
Heck no, that stuff's expensive.
Mistake number 2, you don't change out your fishing line often enough. So the question becomes, how often should you change out your fishing line? Durability depends on the use and the type of fishing line you're using. And of course, how you're fishing that line, which is the X factor. Are you in open water or are you in the river beating the tar out of that line? Since I don't know how you're using your line, I'm just gonna focus on the 3 major types of fishing line out there and show you some general guidelines of how often you should be changing it out. All right, first let's talk about the monofilament. If you fish every day, 2 to 3 times a year. If you're a weekend warrior, 1, maybe 2 times a year. And if you haven't used that line in 2 years, you're gonna wanna replace it. All right, let's talk about your fluorocarbon. If you fish every day, 3 times a year, fish every other day, 1 to 2 times a year. And if you're a weekend warrior, about 1 time a year. All right, let's talk about braid. If you fish every day, 1 to 2 times a year. If you fish every day, about 1 time a year. And the same thing goes if you're a weekend warrior. The kryptonite to braid is abrasion. All right, I'm curious, this is where I want to hear from you. How often do you change out your fishing line? Let me know in the comments below. Mistake number 3 that people make with their fishing line is underestimating the sun. UV light will destroy just about anything. If you don't believe me, go ask all the hot tub covers around the nation. Well, it's no different with your fishing line either. I was actually reading an article on Berkeley Fishing, and this is what they said. They said under normal circumstances, monofilament line will lose 20% of its tensile strength after 100 hours of exposure to sunlight. So a pro tip for you, don't store your fishing poles in the back of your car in direct sunlight. Now, by all means, put fishing poles in the back of your car. Just make sure that you protect them. Now, your fluorocarbon is kind of interesting because they don't degrade like mono does in UV radiation, which is kind of cool. So you don't have to worry a whole lot about your fluorocarbon. And braid is essentially immune to UV light, at least to the point where you never need to worry about it. All right, moving on, number 4, do you store your poles in your fishing line in a place where there's a lot of humidity? Well, if you store your fishing line out in the open, in the middle of your garage, in the middle of the sweltering summer heat, you are not doing yourselves any favors. All right, I got 3 tips for you here. Store it in a waterproof box. It'd be great if that box wasn't clear. If it is clear, make sure you store it in the dark. And also, every once in a while, you'll buy a pair of shoes and you see one of those little silica gel packs. Keep them, don't throw it away. You can actually use those to absorb the moisture so it doesn't get into your fishing line and degrade it. Hey, if you're tracking with me, if you're getting value, please help me out. Hit that like button right down there. Moving on to the number 1 mistake. Imagine a scenario, you've done your research, you're fishing and the stars have aligned. You are absolutely slaying them, one after another after another. Then the moment of your dreams happen. You hook up with a huge swamp donkey. You didn't know your rod could bend like that. And for the first time in a long time, your drag starts letting out. You start to sweat a little bit, you're yelling for your buddy, hey, go grab the net. And then he's about 20 yards from where you are, and snap. 16 yards of line fly back into your face. At first there's silence, and then there's some choice words that you're likely gonna have to ask for forgiveness for later. And after you calm down a little bit, you start to analyze what happened. You pull in your line, you look at the end, it's a really clean snap, so it likely didn't break off at the knot, and you're sitting there scratching your head, what happened? Well, if you find yourself in a scenario, likely what happened is you had micro cuts and abrasions at the end of your line, which acted as a weak point, and now unfortunately you have a story of the one that got away. Here's a pro tip for you. Every once in a while, check the first 6 to 7 feet of your line, just measure it out by the length of your rod, and check for micro cuts and abrasions. This is specifically great for your mono and your fluoro because you're gonna be able to feel those. And when it comes to braid, you can actually see it when there's a lot of abrasions on it. So what I'll do, if I see a lot of that, if I feel micro cuts on my mono and my fluoro, I actually just cut that off and pull some fresh line down and retie. Trust me, you will thank me later for this. And if you like these tips, you'll probably like this video, 14 reasons you're not catching bass from your kayak, right there. Thanks guys for watching, bye.